General Hospital will reveal Rick had always been known as a shrewd manipulator and calculating opportunist in Port Charles, but this time, his instincts and cunning had led him to a revelation that could shift the entire custody battle surrounding Wiley. While conducting his own private investigation, ostensibly under the guise of helping Willow build a case against Michael, Rick unearthed a piece of information so explosive that it had the power to detonate the entire foundation of Michael's credibility as a father, a partner, and a public figure. In the process of tracing Michael's recent movements, relationships, and private dealings, Rick stumbled across a deeply buried secret that hadn't yet reached even the ears of the man at the center of the storm, Michael himself. Sasha was pregnant. At first, Rick assumed it was a rumor. Another desperate fabrication floating through the gossip channels of Port Charles. But as he dug deeper, connecting timelines and uncovering medical documentation from a discreet clinic on the outskirts of town, he confirmed what few knew: Sasha was carrying a child. And all signs pointed to one possible father, Michael. The timeline matched too perfectly. Rick uncovered surveillance footage from a luxury hotel bar months earlier, where Michael and Sasha had reconnected during a particularly vulnerable night. Witnesses reported seeing the two leave together, visibly intoxicated, emotionally raw, and clinging to each other as if chasing something long lost. What happened behind closed doors wasn't just speculation, it was confirmed by hotel records and, later, by Sasha's own medical appointments. Rick had his proof. Instead of bringing this information straight to court, Rick realized the deeper value of the secret. He saw the power it could wield, especially over those already teetering on the edge of collapse. One such person was Drew, who had recently found himself embroiled in a federal investigation into financial misconduct tied to Aurora Media. Rick, always several steps ahead, reached out to Drew under the veil of confidentiality and laid out the terms of a clandestine arrangement. For a substantial sum of money, Rick would deliver exclusive information that could ruin Michael's standing in court and in public. The evidence of Michael's possible paternity, his drunken liaison with Sasha, and the unborn child at the center of it all was too tempting to ignore. It was, as Rick put it, a nuclear weapon. Drew hesitated, but not for long. The pressure from federal regulators, the media scrutiny, and his own crumbling relationship with Willow pushed him over the edge. He wired the money. In return, Rick handed him a dossier filled with photographs, testimonies, and lab requisitions that built a compelling narrative of betrayal and irresponsibility. Armed with this devastating truth, Drew prepared to confront Willow, not to warn her, but to use the information as leverage. He believed that by exposing Michael's transgressions, he could regain Willow's trust, position himself as the stable alternative, and gain favor with the courts. Willow, still reeling from her discovery of Michael's former secret dealings with Dex and his dangerous proximity to Sonny's criminal world, felt her foundation cracking. She had tried to justify his past, to forgive. But now she was presented with undeniable proof that Michael had not only been hiding more from her but might have fathered a child with another woman while they were still entangled. The betrayal ran deeper than she could have imagined. Fueled by heartbreak and a growing sense of moral righteousness, Willow began preparing a legal campaign to obtain full custody of Wiley. She hired a new team of lawyers, had them comb through Michael's financials, scrutinize his communications, and trace his contacts with Sasha. She masked her fury with a layer of maternal concern, citing instability, secrecy, and emotional volatility as reasons to restrict Michael's custody rights. The legal documents portrayed Michael as someone who lived a double life, an image-conscious father in public and a reckless man spiraling in private. The inclusion of Sasha's pregnancy, subtly inserted as part of a moral character argument, painted Michael as someone who might already be abandoning one child while fighting for another. It was cold, calculated, and devastatingly effective. Rick, meanwhile, watched from the shadows, his influence stretching through every corner of the courthouse. He had no real interest in the well-being of Wiley or even in Willow's sense of justice. What drove Rick was the opportunity to humiliate Michael, the son of Sonny, and perhaps, by extension, to inflict damage on the Corinthos' name once again. With every leaked detail, every whispered implication that Michael was about to be a father for the second time without acknowledgement, Rick tightened the noose. He ensured that Sasha's subpoena was delivered under intense media glare and that her court date coincided with a custody hearing. The timing was surgical. He wanted her fear, her confusion, and her vulnerability on full display. Sasha, caught off guard and utterly unprepared, found herself backed into a corner. Her pregnancy had been something she hoped to navigate privately, away from judgment, noise, and pain. But now it was a matter of public scrutiny. Jason, who had been quietly protecting her from afar, scrambled to call in favors. He reached out to Diane, imploring her to petition the court to allow Sasha to testify privately or not at all. Diane, ever the formidable attorney, tried to shield Sasha with a protective order, citing mental health and safety concerns. But Rick had anticipated this too and had already built a counter-narrative, that Sasha was an unreliable witness with a pattern of instability and drug use. Someone whose version of events couldn't be trusted unless spoken in open court under oath. As Sasha stepped onto the witness stand, every eye in the room locked onto her. The judge asked direct questions. The opposing counsel pressed harder, demanding clarity about the date of conception, the nature of her relationship with Michael, and whether Michael had ever acknowledged the child. Sasha, her voice barely above a whisper, tried to remain composed. But her glances toward Michael, who sat stiffly in the gallery, expressionless, betrayed her inner turmoil. Michael, devastated, knew the damage was irreversible. He had made mistakes. He had lied, withheld, and failed to come clean when it mattered most. Now he was paying the price, not just in court, but in his relationships. Willow looked at him with a mix of disgust and pity, Drew observed with quiet satisfaction. And Sasha. Sasha was crumbling under the weight of a truth she had never meant to weaponize. The media had a field day. Headlines screamed betrayal, fatherhood scandals, courtroom breakdowns. Carly was livid, not only at Michael for his recklessness but at Willow for weaponizing motherhood and Rick for orchestrating a circus. She tried to reach out to Jason, demanding damage control. But even he knew this might be a storm no one could weather intact. Rick, however, emerged unscathed. In his mind, justice was served. Not justice for Sasha or Willow or Wiley, but justice for every slight, every insult he had endured in a town that never gave him the respect he craved. By uncovering Sasha's pregnancy and using it to topple Michael's world, Rick had finally proven what he always believed, that secrets are power, and in Port Charles, power is everything. Rick, now holding the reins of a deeply personal and high-stakes war, moved with the precision of a seasoned predator. He knew timing was everything. With each hearing, each strategic leak, and each ambiguous allusion, he began to plant seeds of doubt surrounding Sasha's pregnancy. He never named names outright, but he didn't have to. His implications were pointed, loaded, and perfectly delivered. He spoke in carefully constructed phrases, laced with just enough innuendo to suggest that Michael could be the father of Sasha's unborn child. It was enough to spark curiosity, whispers, and ultimately, suspicion, not just in the courtroom, but across the entire city of Port Charles. Sasha, who had desperately tried to shield herself from public scrutiny, found herself dragged into the center of the legal inferno. A subpoena arrived, bearing Rick's fingerprints in more ways than one. She was to appear in court to testify, ostensibly about her observations as someone close to Michael, but in reality, the underlying intention was clear: Rick wanted to expose her. To force her to confirm or deny the identity of the child's father in front of the entire courtroom. Panic set in almost immediately. The stress mounted as the media descended on her home. her workplace, and even the clinic where she had been quietly receiving prenatal care. Her secret, once fiercely guarded, now hung by a thread. Jason, who had been watching from a distance, quickly moved into action. He reached out to Diane, hoping to secure some form of protective order, to shield Sasha from having to testify or at least to make her testimony private. But Rick had anticipated such a maneuver. He had come prepared with irrefutable evidence, medical files, testimony from clinic staff, and even footage from the night Sasha and Michael had been seen together. Rick argued that Sasha's testimony was critical to the custody hearing, not because of her character witness value, but because she held a potential key to Michael's moral fitness as a parent. The judge, under pressure from the weight of the public interest, and with several court officials now aligned with Rick through unseen channels, denied Diane's motions. Every attempt to delay or seal the court proceedings was overruled. The day Sasha arrived in court, the air in Port Charles felt charged with electricity. Reporters lined the steps, cameras flashed, and onlookers whispered as she walked into the courthouse. Her composure was brittle at best, and once she took the stand, it didn't take long before the relentless barrage from Rick's legal team began. Every question was crafted to corner her, to force a revelation. Jason could only sit helplessly in the gallery, fists clenched, as Sasha was dissected under oath. The moment came, inevitable and cruel, when she was asked directly whether Michael was the father of her child. Her eyes darted toward Michael, who stared back in disbelief and regret. With tears threatening to spill, Sasha admitted that while there had been one night, she had not yet confirmed paternity. The room erupted in murmurs, and Rick knew he had succeeded. The damage was done. Michael, sitting at the eye of the storm, felt his world fracture beyond repair. Discovering that Sasha was pregnant was already overwhelming. Learning that Drew and Rick had exploited that information, weaponized it, and now exposed it publicly, left him emotionally paralyzed. He had failed to protect Sasha, failed to be honest with Willow, and failed to anticipate the growing web of deceit closing in around him. Willow, once the woman who had stood by his side through illness, grief, and conflict, now treated him as an adversary. Her glances were cold, her tone clinical, and her intentions clear. She was no longer just seeking justice, she was seeking complete severance, custody, and control. As if that wasn't enough, Sasha's safety became a growing concern. She was being hounded by tabloid journalists, ambushed outside clinics, and chased through the streets. Online, her face was plastered across social media with cruel speculation and invasive commentary. Some took it further, anonymous threats arrived, some demanding she name the father, others threatening harm if she continued to hide behind silence. Michael, helpless to intervene, watched as yet another person he cared about was destroyed simply by association with him. Driven by guilt, he made a last-ditch effort to reach Willow, hoping to salvage some sliver of understanding between them. But his words, pleas for reason, remorse for his failings, fell on deaf ears. Willow no longer saw the man she had married. To her, Michael had become a symbol of everything she wanted to shield Wiley from: lies, danger, instability. What was once a family now stood divided, each member isolated by pain and resentment. Meanwhile, Sasha had no choice but to continue cooperating with the court, despite Jason's efforts to get her a temporary protective status. The court saw her as a key figure in determining Michael's fitness as a parent. The prosecution leaned into the narrative that Sasha's presence and pregnancy revealed a recklessness in Michael that was unfit for fatherhood. They dredged up past behavior, his connection to Sonny, his history with the mob, and his pattern of secret keeping. Every moment of vulnerability between Michael and Sasha, which once felt like refuge, was now twisted into a weapon against him. Rick, ever the puppeteer, remained composed and smiling, watching the chaos unfold exactly as he had engineered. He didn't need to attack Michael directly, he had Sasha, Drew, and Willow all playing their parts in dismantling Michael's world. And the most sinister part was that Willow had no idea she was a pawn in Rick's broader scheme. She believed she was protecting her child, reclaiming control, and seeking justice. But what she couldn't see was how her determination was being exploited to fulfill Rick's long-standing vendetta against the Corinthos family. Jason, too, found himself caught in the tides. His usual influence and reach were being eroded by corruption within the court system. Several judges and officials had begun quietly shifting allegiances, favoring Rick's arguments. Subtly influenced by financial incentives or fear of exposure. Jason realized this wasn't just a custody battle, it was a power play. A calculated attempt to dethrone Michael and fracture the Corinthos' influence in Port Charles. Carly, once the fortress behind Michael, now found herself paralyzed by conflict. She had always fought for her son, defended him through his darkest choices, but this time, the lines were too blurred. Michael had lied. He had hurt people. But so had Willow. And watching Willow use Wiley as a pawn, twisting a child into a weapon, filled Carly with a deep, burning fury. She confronted Willow, begged her to reconsider. To think beyond legal tactics and remember the love they once shared as a family. But Willow had made her choice. To her, this wasn't just a custody battle, it was a reckoning. A fight for respect, identity, and freedom from the Corinthos legacy. Port Charles, long accustomed to secrets, betrayal, and power struggles, now bore witness to a new kind of war, one not fought in alleys or boardrooms, but in courtrooms and hearts. A battle where truth became relative, where every testimony had consequences. And where the life of an unborn child, innocent and unaware, became the stake upon which reputations rose and fell. Rick continued to pull strings from the shadows. Willow turned colder and more calculating by the day, Sasha faced threats from both within and without, Drew vacillated between guilt and ambition. And Michael, once the golden child, now stood alone amid the rubble of his former life, wondering if any path remained to redemption, or if this fall from grace was, indeed, the final chapter.